Okay, good morning and welcome back to our 2020 Virtually Everywhere Farm to School Conference. All right, this is day 2. If you missed day 1, we are recording the sessions and you can watch those later. We hope to have those up by the end of the month. Today is October 1st, so that means that it is the beginning of National Farm to School Month. And you can celebrate today and every day of October by doing the Farm to School Challenge. One of those is having a Satsuma peel. So we have our fresh Satsumas here from Bluff Creek, Louisiana, to celebrate National Farm to School Month by eating a local Satsuma. So today in our first session, we'll be having a basic overview of procurement principles and regulations as they relate to Louisiana and identify areas of flexibility. We'll be joined by Crystal Bessie, Director of the Louisiana Farm to School Program, and she'll walk us through procurement methods for getting local foods into schools. And then we'll have Celeste Finney and Lester Williams. Celeste is from Lafayette Parish School System, and Lester Williams is the owner and farmer at Williams Produce, talking about their story of local procurement. A reminder that you can type questions into the Q&A, as well as utilize the chat box for connecting with each other. We'll be sending links to our program there in the chat. And if you click through the program, you'll find instructions of how to use our program. The entire thing is clickable and hyperlinked. You'll find resources for today's session, our later session after our break, and the entire conference there. And with all that, I think we're ready to get started. Any messages? Looks good. Okay. All right. Well, we will pull our videos up.
Hi, my name is Crystal Bessie. I am the Louisiana Farm to School Program Director, and I'd like to thank you all for coming today. We're going to talk a little bit about farm to school procurement before we get into our conversation about a story of local procurement. I just want to give you a little background about how procurement works with school systems and how they purchase food. So I'm just going to go into a little more detail about the different types of procurement methods that are available for schools. So what is local, and how is that defined by a school? Local can span the school tray, the school meal tray. It's not just about fresh fruits and vegetables, and it's not just about farmers, although this is a logical starting place for local procurement. Fresh fruits especially are easy because they can be served with little to no preparation beyond washing, but any of these items can be local on the meal tray. Ultimately, it's up to each school district, childcare institution, or summer food service program to set the definition that works best for their particular needs and goals. Schools can define local however they see fit and according to what they're trying to accomplish. Having specific goals for their purchasing efforts will help craft a definition for local that works best to service those goals. Beyond using goals to set a definition of local, a common way schools will define local are using a geographic area. So it may be within a radius, within a parish, a state, or a region. And you can see in the 3 examples provided on the screen, the image on the left shows that this is a more regional approach with a few other states besides Louisiana included. There is a statewide approach in the middle image, and their definition will only include Louisiana producers. The third approach is a more regional approach, but it also stays within the state of Louisiana. Other things that might be considered are seasonality, special events, and product availability. The district may use one of these definitions for all of their purchases, or they might choose to use all of the definitions for different purchases at different times of the year. Now let's look at some different ways that you can use that definition of local in the federal procurement process. So when I talk about procurement, I'm talking about the purchasing of goods and services. The procurement process that you see on your screen is a process that any school will go through when they make purchases. And today we're talking in particular about food. So once they decide how much they need or what goods and services they need, they will create specifications and then plug those into a solicitation. The solicitation will go out to vendors and responders, and once they get responses back on interested parties, then they will award a contract, and then beyond that, they will just continue to manage that contract. There are 4 USDA procurement principles that guide the procurement process and ensure that taxpayer money is only used to procure the best products or services at the lowest possible prices. And these apply to local and non-local products. The 4 principles are federal, state, and local regulations, competition, responsive and responsible, and the Buy American Clause. The most important principle of a sound procurement is competition. Full and open competition essentially means that all potential suppliers are on a level playing field. Responsive and responsible refers to a vendor. A responsive vendor will respond to a solicitation and conform to all the terms and conditions of that solicitation. In order to be a responsible vendor, they must be able to perform successfully under those terms and conditions. The Buy American provision applies only to the National School Lunch Program. It's not found in regulations for the Summer Food Service Program or the Child and Adult Care Food Program. Now that we know what procurement is, let's talk about the different types of procurement methods. There are 4 procurement methods when making purchases, and those are further divided into formal and informal methods. The important distinction here is the simplified acquisition or small purchase threshold. That will determine whether a procurement is conducted formally or informally. Depending on the purchase, you will either follow the federal small purchase threshold, which is $250,000, or our Louisiana small purchase threshold, which is $30,000. If you plan to procure something above this threshold, you will use formal methods. If your purchase is at or below that threshold, you are allowed to use informal methods. Let's talk about each one of these procedures individually. First is the micro-purchase procedure, and there are 3 key elements to a micro-purchase. The most significant difference in micro-purchases and the other procurement methods is that these can be awarded without soliciting any quotations, if the school or program operator considers the cost reasonable. Another key component of micro-purchasing is the aggregate purchase amount. So program operators may utilize micro-purchasing as long as the aggregate cost is less than $10,000 in a single transaction. And this aggregate amount refers to the total cost of the transaction or one occurrence in which goods, services, or money is exchanged between 2 or more entities. Finally, micro-purchases need to be equitably distributed among qualified suppliers. So all micro-purchases should not be made from one supplier when multiple sources are available, and they also cannot make multiple micro-purchases to avoid the use of small purchase procedures or otherwise formal purchases. Informal procurement is the small purchase, which follows the simplified acquisition or small purchase threshold. In Louisiana, we follow the more restrictive state ruling at $30,000 for most purchases with a few exclusions. Small purchase procedures can be followed when the amount is equal to or less than the applicable small purchase threshold. Small purchases require that schools develop written specifications. This is true even though the process is informal. They must require bids from an adequate number of responsible and responsive vendors, and they must document all their bids, whether they are submitted in writing or over the phone verbally. The invitation for bid or competitive sealed bids are the first of two formal procurement methods. Sealed bidding is only feasible when the contract can be awarded on price alone. In this case, you must create complete and realistic specifications. You must publicly advertise your invitation and solicit bids, and you must find two or more responsible bidders who are willing and able to compete effectively for the business. The second formal method of procurement is the request for proposals or a competitive proposal. This method includes evaluation criteria that is in addition to price, and it can result in either a fixed price or a cost reimbursable contract. Some of these factors can include, besides price, technical expertise, past experience, the number of years in business, marketing. It can include stating the name or the farm of origin on invoices, or even providing education for agricultural or nutrition education for school classrooms or lunchrooms. The vendor who's best able to provide this value receives the award. Like sealed bidding, requests for proposals require public solicitation. They must describe all evaluation factors, their importance, and how the factors will be used to assess the proposal. Awards will then be made to the most advantageous program with price and other factors considered. Next, I will talk a little bit about some procurement strategies that pertain specifically to purchasing local. One strategy that is unique to Louisiana is a law that was passed in 2015 known as the Small Purchase Threshold Bill. This allows nutrition program providers to use the federal small purchase threshold instead of the more restrictive state small purchase threshold when purchasing local agricultural products. This means that child nutrition programs can use informal methods to procure local agricultural products at or below $250,000 rather than going through the formal purchasing process. To assist child nutrition programs in understanding whether or not they can apply this law when purchasing products, the Louisiana Farm to School program has developed a decision tree as seen on this slide. This will help you understand if and when you may be able to apply the federal small purchase threshold for your purchases. This tool is available on our website and also is found in our new school guide for local food purchasing. Another local procurement strategy comes from the USDA Geographic Preference Rule. This came from the 2008 Farm Bill created to have a geographic preference to encourage institutions to purchase unprocessed agricultural products, both locally grown and locally raised. In 2011, the final rule for geographic preference clarified who can define local. They defined the term unprocessed, and they also made it clear that a preference is a preference and is not the same as a specification. You can find more information about geographic preference under the specific rules referenced in the upper right corner of this slide. Even though the purchasing process is similar whether you are buying local or not, the challenge of finding a local producer remains. There are resources available by word of mouth as well as online. Louisiana Market Maker is an online repository of local producers within the state of Louisiana. You can use this website to search for local producers or certain products in your area. You can also inquire at your parish extension office, with other school districts, or ask your produce distributor what they are already sourcing local. Remember that working with farmers can be a little different than purchasing through a distributor. You will need to think ahead about your quantity, food safety, and how much you're willing to pay for a product. You also may want to consider if you will require liability insurance. Being clear about what you expect from a farmer is the best way to establish a good working relationship. Farmers may or may not be familiar with U.S. grade standards, but you can write the quality and condition descriptors in your specifications to help clarify what you want. You can also set up a Meet the Buyers, Greet the Growers event and have the farmers bring in samples of their products. If you want to learn more about Farm to School or the procurement process, please visit our website at www.lsuagcenter.com/Louisiana Farm to School. We have also just released a brand new resource called the School Guide for Local Food Purchasing, as pictured here on the slide. This guide contains everything that I have talked about today in even more detail, plus many more tools and resources to help guide you step by step through the local food procurement process. Look for an electronic copy on our website. If you are a child nutrition department for a school or a school district, you can look for a hard copy of this guide in your mailbox. Now let's hear some first-hand experiences with purchasing local in Lafayette Parish School System.
Hi, I'm Crystal Bessie. I work with the Louisiana Farm to School program as the Louisiana Farm to School program director, and that is with the LSU Ag Center. We provide materials and resources across the state of Louisiana for helping farm to school activities, procurement, and school gardening. And I would like to welcome today Mr. Lester Williams and Celeste Hay Finney. Mr. Lester Williams, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your farm and operation?
My name is Lester Williams. I'm a farmer. I'm the owner of Williams Produce. I'm the president of Minority Farmers Co-op. We grow fresh vegetables to deliver to different places, like mustard green, collard green, turnip green, spinach. There's a big variety of stuff that being grown.
Celeste, would you mind to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Celeste Finney, and I'm the registered dietitian and nutrition program coordinator for Lafayette Parish. And this just gives you a little snapshot of where we're located. We are in South Central Louisiana, right in Cajun country. We have about 30,000 students enrolled. And this year, of course, with the COVID pandemic, our numbers look a little different. We have about a third of our students are enrolled in our Lafayette Online Academy, so they are physically not attending school every day. So we have about 6,500 breakfasts that we're serving daily, which is down from about 10,000 on a regular school year, and about right under 12,000 lunches each day, which is down from about 20,000 lunches at a normal school year. And we're also accommodating during the pandemic where we're having our secondary students, middle and high schools, are coming on a hybrid schedule. So they're coming on an A day and then on a B day. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what our operation looks like this year.
Thank you. Celeste, can you tell us a little bit more about why do you think farm to school is important to incorporate in your menus?
Sure. Yeah. When I first came on board with Lafayette Parish Schools, my role before coming here was as a diabetes educator. And so, with that position, it was very near and dear to my heart with the reasons that as adults we're dealing with diabetes and obesity, and just really the urgency of the situation that we're in with our public health. And so, as the dietitian for Lafayette Parish Schools, I'm challenged to be the nutrition educator. And what's really interesting is when I did some research to find out a way to bring nutrition education to our school system. And what I found was that it's really about partnering that nutrition education with gardening education. And right now, with the current state of obesity, we have 36% of adults are obese, 34% of children are obese. And so I really wanted to dig deep with how we can really move the needle in regards to behavior change. And farm to school, the three tenets of gardening, nutrition education, and procurement is really what I found is the way to really get kids interested in eating fresh produce, fresh vegetables. It's something about having all those moving pieces together that really make an impact. The students in our parish who participate with our school garden initiative and have nutrition education, those students we've researched and we found that they in fact prefer more vegetables and more fruits than students who don't participate in the program. And they in turn go home and get their families excited about grocery shopping and trying different fruits and vegetables for their meals, which is a huge win as a dietitian. So the other part of farm to school, besides gardening and nutrition education, is that procurement piece with how we can bring local produce to our menu to really come full circle with our education efforts. As a child nutrition program, we're challenged to every meal we have fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, milk, whole grains. We have all of these menu components that are part of the USDA dietary guidelines for Americans. And we really have the catch-22 where that's not what kids want to eat. So really, I think by bridging that gap and bringing in local produce, we can use our program as another form of outreach and education to our students, which is just an awesome thing. So that's really kind of how I got interested in farm to school and how it's evolved since I've been here.
Why did you want to get involved with school systems, and how long have you been working with schools?
One other thing before I get involved in, we talk about that. I forgot to tell my location. We are located in Punka Parish. I slipped my mind on that one. The reason I wanted to get involved with farm to school program is number one is to give kids more healthy, fresher vegetables to eat to get away from maybe some of the junk food. I seen the opportunity and I got involved with it. We started with one of the colleges, SLU, where the school wanted to know where the vegetables was coming from, where the food was coming from, and it kind of went from there where they contacted Indian Spring contacted Point Capee, and we got involved with that. From there, it went to Alexandria, where they did the farm to school program, where you would deliver to the food bank. The food bank would distribute it. The kids would get the fresh vegetables to actually be able to bring it home to be prepared with their parents. And it started with 2 schools, and it went to 7 schools, and we did it for 5 years. And when I came to this, I was introduced to the this conference last year where I came to it and met Celeste and some of the other ladies.
That's a good segue for Celeste to talk about a little bit more about sharing some ways that you can have that you've purchased local items. And I know Lester was saying that he met you at the Farm to School conference last year during our Meet the Buyers, Greet the Growers event. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Celeste?
Sure. Yeah, this was a great event last year because we had the Meet the Buyers event the evening before the conference, which just gave us a nice opportunity to really network and meet other growers in the area. And so we made quite a few contacts of local producers in Louisiana that could be a fit for our procurement needs. And so this next slide is just an example of kind of how we started. So I know with child nutrition programs, you know, it's an overwhelming kind of daunting task. How do I get these local items on our menu? And this is just to kind of give you an example of how we got started. Was really just looking at what items do we already have on the menu? You know, we have a 4-week cycle. We are right in the middle of rice country. So we have rice on our menu several times a week between beef stew, red beans and rice, jambalaya, just to name a few items. And so it really started just by kind of identifying that, like, hey, we are literally right in the middle of where rice is grown for the entire country. So historically, we were purchasing rice through USDA, but that particular rice typically came from a co-op in the Midwest, like Arkansas, Missouri area. And so that was an easy change for us. It was like, okay, well, that's something we can bid locally. And in our bid verbiage, you know, we asked that we'd like marketing support. And so that was a great way for us to specify that Supreme Rice, which is grown right here in Acadiana in Crowley, it was a great way for us to partner with them so that we have a way to show our students that we have this locally grown item on our menu. You know, I think a lot of kids don't realize why some of the items that we eat at our homes, like gumbo and red beans and rice and jambalaya and you know, all of these different dishes, Cajun and Creole dishes, have rice in them because we're right in the middle of where rice is grown. So I think that's a huge win for us to be able to share that. And then our next slide, we have an example of kind of how we started with Mr. Lester and kind of where we went from there with looking at, you know, Mr. Lester's farm is a smaller scale farm than a big production like rice farming, but we really tried to break apart our menu and kind of see what we can do with what he's available to grow. So let's see if we can get to the next slide, Crystal. There we go. So here we have our menu where, again, we kind of looked at, okay, red beans and sausage. We have mustard greens on that day. And then we have a turkey and sausage jambalaya with a side of sweet potatoes. That's something easy that I don't have to change any menus. I can literally work with Mr. Lester and look at what kind of quantities we need to pilot getting his produce in here for just a couple schools. So this started, we wanted to start small. So we chose one school, Charles Burke Elementary, which is part of our School Garden Initiative program. The third graders there already garden. They are super excited about learning about gardening and farming and fresh fruits and vegetables. So that was a great school for us to look at. And I know child nutrition people, you're familiar with the good old food buying guide, but this was exactly what I used. we looked at, okay, for Charles Burke, I have an average daily participation at lunch of 550 students. So how many raw pounds of mustard greens and how many raw pounds of sweet potatoes would I need in order to get that 550 half cup portion? And so really just started as simple as that, with just doing, pencil to paper and doing the math, and letting Mr. Lester know these are our quantities for our winter menu. And then, he was able to go back and say, okay, well, this has a 45-day planting life. And so I'll get started on that. And I'm looking about, maybe in February that'll be ready. And that's kind of how the conversation started. And I want to point out with this December menu as well, another piece of what we were really inspired by from the Farm to School Conference was bringing satsumas on our menu. The Farm to School Conference has the Great Louisiana Satsuma Peel, which is really kind of a fun little example of just some promotions you can do to get the kids excited about different produce. So last December, we were able to purchase satsumas through Capital City, which is our current produce vendor. And then they were able to put us in touch with the nursery, Star Nursery, that's located in Belle Chase. I called them. Those are real pictures from their orchards. And we just put a little tidbit of information on our menu about, the history of satsumas. And it was something that I think the kids enjoyed because they can peel it themselves versus regular oranges that are pre-sliced by our kitchens. I know our staff loved it because they didn't have to pre-cut the satsumas. They just went straight on the student's tray. And so it was really a win-win for all of us. So that was really a big success from and some takeaways from what we learned at last year's conference.
Did you have an idea of the produce you wanted to purchase, and you were looking for a farmer or grower who could supply that, or did you find farms that could work with your school system and then choose produce based on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because this is so new to us, I think we're very flexible with, let's not reinvent the wheel here. What is our menu? What do our kids like? And then who might be growing those items that would be a good fit for our menu? And like in the case of Satsuma, no problem. We can change the menu and put that on there. But in the event, Mr. Lester, for example, we already had sweet potatoes on our menu and we already had mustard greens on our menu. So that was like an easy fit to just put those items in there that could support his farm and use it as an educational piece.
She tell me what she's looking for, and what she needs me to grow for whatever her menu is, whatever they're gonna be using, and I can fit that into my growing, season. I can set aside this many acres for the school.
So did you discuss seasonality with the people that you sell to? Are there certain things that you can only grow during certain times of the year?
Yeah, well, like spinach, where you can't grow spinach year round, so you can only grow spinach from you start growing spinach in like middle of this month, and it go all the way until May. So when it start getting warm, spinach hate warm weather. So when May come around, well, knowing that it start getting more warmer, the spinach it ain't gonna produce. Broccoli, cabbage, all that is like a fall winter crop. So you can grow that for so many months. Well, mustard green you can grow year round. It's just a year round crop. Collard greens a year round crop. Kale is a year round crop. But all your others, you just got to know what crop how many months what crop gonna produce That way, at a certain point in time, it's gonna stop.
So it's kind of switching gears now to food safety. With the safety of our students in mind and working with their school system and requirements of that school system, what steps did you take to ensure that your product is safe and meets the requirements of the school systems? And was this a barrier to you?
Start out by taking all the safety classes, which were required to take before I really started dealing with the schools. Just selling to, like I could sell to stores and things, and the requirements was we had to take all these classes to be trained how to, do vegetables a different way than what the old way used to be.
Hi, Celeste. We'll move on to you next. I have a question for you about visiting the farm with Mr. Lester. We were just talking about safety requirements, and can you talk a little bit about the visit that you did with Mr. Lester and before he became an official vendor at Lafayette Parish, and what kinds of things were you looking for at the farm?
Sure. No, it was a great visit. Because we're not going through a traditional vendor like we do with Capital City, and after my conversations with you, Crystal, we thought a farm visit would be a great way to kind of really see with our own eyes kind of the food safety that's going on and just the state of the farm. I use the farm to school checklist for producers selling produce to local K-12 schools, which was a huge help. And I also want to point out, LSU Ag Center was a great support when we went to the farm. It wasn't just myself that visited. Crystal, Bessie with the Farm to School Program Director attended, Dr. Kiki Fontenot with LSU Ag Center, Dr. Ashut Adhikari, and also Alessandro with LSU Ag Center were all able to attend. And to just really help answer those questions, I was looking mostly, common sense things. Is the sewage contained? Is there anything running close to the plants that shouldn't be there? So it's basic questions like, do you use manure, which Mr. Lester does not? And also, what kind of pesticides is he using? Also, kind of just the process of harvesting, like how soon are you harvesting? Is it a safe place that you put your produce before you package it? And, what kind of overall state the farm is in and the cleanliness and kind of the process and procedures from that standpoint. So it was really great to have, considering this was my first time on a farm visit for this purpose, it was really great to have that support from LSU Ag Center just to make sure that we're, following the correct process to ensure that the produce that we're buying is safe for the students.
Mr. Lester, can you explain how you were set up to become a vendor at the school system?
Pretty much set up a meeting with her to come get with her, and we went over everything, and here we go.
So she set you up with some paperwork that you filled out for her school system. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So we have for Lafayette Parish Schools, we have a couple different. We have a debarment form and a W-9 and just regular kind of purchasing forms that need to be filled up ahead of time so that we could get Mr. Lester approved as a vendor. So that way, once we had the produce and we had a plan, it would be an easy process to send payment his way.
Celeste, can you expand a little bit more about how your items were chosen for your menu? How did you decide on quantity of food to purchase?
Sure. So that's really where I use the Food Buyer's Guide. We chose the one school that we wanted to pilot, which was Charles Burke Elementary. So I know how many numbers for lunch we plan for each menu day. So I was able to take that, and by using the food buyer's guide, I simply chose the items that were on our menu that Mr. Lester had available to grow, and we picked out the raw pounds based on the food buyer's guide, and then went from there with a price list he had developed with his co-op. And then we're also, one thing I didn't mention is, you know, I was also inspired at last year's Farm to School conference because we had a speaker for child nutrition programs the day before, Donna Martin, who is a director in Georgia. And so she shared one of her best practices is where she really utilizes the Farm to School program in her state for her fresh fruit and vegetable program. So that's another piece that Mr. Lester and I have been working on with the fresh fruit and vegetable program that we operate at one of our elementary schools. The task there is to serve the produce raw. And so it needs to be something like carrots or broccoli with a dip or cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes, anything like that, even fresh watermelon that can be cut up. And so Mr. Lester and I have been working on other items for just that school that I think quantity-wise is manageable for Mr. Lester in order to bring in items that we can serve raw to the students to fulfill that fresh fruit and vegetable program angle.
Can you talk a little bit about how you determine the price for your products when you sell to schools?
We work together on the price, and I try to make sure everybody's comfortable, you know, with everything, and that makes it easier. You know, I don't know everything, but I try to, you know, I shop around and make sure I ain't overcharging nobody. I'm not gonna make sure I'm not gonna overcharge the school. Make sure I'm doing, you know, I want to be more help because of the fresh vegetables for the school, for the kids.
Yeah, so that was great. So the day that Mr. Lester came and delivered sweet potatoes to Charles Burke Elementary, again, that third grade class and those amazing teachers that operate the School Garden Initiative had some time for Mr. Lester to come in as a guest speaker and share with the kids about farming. He brought some great visual aids from a seed to a seedling and went through the plant life and the plant stages and, you know, again, why growing fruits and vegetables is such a noble profession, and, you know, the nutrition of eating foods that come under, you know, from the farm and are grown in the sunlight. And so he really shared an impact because a lot of our kids, you know, you think about today's generation, they may not have access to farmers, or they may not personally know anyone who farms for a living. So I think that was an awesome opportunity for us to kind of share that with our students. And we had the sweet potatoes on our menu. The kids were just even that much more excited to try it and to eat it because they had met Mr. Lester. And they knew the story of where the sweet potatoes came. So it was really just a great experience all around.
I thank both of you, Mr. Lester Williams and Celeste Finney, for discussing this story with us today. We really appreciate it, and I hope that you have learned something.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody. Those were our videos on story of local procurement. And we had a few questions come in. Let me take just a second to invite our panelists back into the room. All right. But we had a few questions. The first was for Celeste, asking kind of what the procurement process looked like on her end.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so for our end, really what we used, we looked at a price list that Mr. Lester had developed with his co-op. And so that's kind of was our starting point for the pricing for each particular produce item, like sweet potatoes, for example. Then once I had my quantity, for just one school, we were well below the $10,000 threshold. So we treated this as a micro purchase. And then we made our invoice. We set up a date, and Mr. Lester and I were in close contact with when that product would be available and ready. And then once we had the product delivered, he was already set up with a vendor ahead of time, and so we were able to make a payment. So it was very a straightforward process because it was such a small dollar amount for that purchase order.
Thanks, Celeste. Sorry, working through a few technical difficulties here. Another question that we had.
Did you ask one?
I asked? No. Okay.
So there's a general question also
Ask that.
about how many meals that you're serving, Celeste, compared to pre-COVID, and also comparing to the start of the school year.
Right. So we have had, a significant decrease in our participation just because, let's see. Okay. Hi, there I am. Okay. So with COVID, obviously we have a significant amount of students and their families that want to take advantage of the virtual option. So the students who are virtual, of course, they're not attending classes in person. So that, of course, affects our numbers in regards to our daily participation. Now, here at our district, we are offering a grab and go meal service once a week for parents to pick up. However, that menu looks a lot different from what we're able to serve in the classroom just because of the nature of grabbing meals to go. We're from a child nutrition standpoint, really thinking through the safety of getting those meals to families. So those are shelf stable meals that we're providing. And then in our classrooms, we have our pre-K through 5th grade students are attending daily. So all of those students are on campus with the exception of those online students. And then we also have our middle and high school students, which at this point are still attending on the hybrid schedule. So those are only coming every other day according to whether they're a group A or a group B student. So with that being said, our numbers are decreased because of just, we don't have that same captive audience that we do in a normal school year. Our menu has also changed quite a bit because we are not having any congregate meals. So students aren't eating in our cafeterias. So all of our meals are designed so that students can take that meal and eat it either back in their classroom. Some schools, if the weather's nice, they're going outside and taking a mask break. So it really has affected all aspects of our operation with COVID.
Great. And then we had a few questions for Mr. Lester, who unfortunately couldn't join us for the live Q&A today, but I think Crystal is going to try to address those questions for us.
So one of the questions is how many acres of Mr. Lester's farm is devoted to the fresh produce for the schools? Maybe Crystal or Celeste has a guess on that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. I can't remember how many acres Mr. Lester has. I believe he has about 40, if that's a guess. I didn't see that question when I was talking to him, but I did call him and ask him the questions that the student submitted about how long does Mr. Lester work each day, and what does he like most about being a farmer? So what Mr. Lester said was, when I'm not working for the state, I work about 12 to 13 hours a day in the garden, as well as in the evenings when I get off work. And so what he likes the most, basically he started growing for his mom when she got sick. So he grew the vegetables because she really, she couldn't do it herself anymore. And she just loved to see her, he loved to see her smile. And so that is what he really likes, is he likes to see people enjoying his vegetables that he grows. And he just likes to see people eating fresh vegetables in general. And he said he likes to play in the dirt.
That's awesome. And that was a really great question from one of our attendees. Dr. Hodson, do you have any questions?
Yes, and I guess this is more of a question maybe for Celeste. I know certainly Krista knows a lot about procurement. Many of our local farmers have very low acreages. Could a group of 2 to 3 farmers pool their produce and submit a bid as one unit? In other words, I know many of the school systems have greater or higher numbers of acreages or pounds of produce needed. Is there such a way that they could work as a team or work as a small group to be able to come up with a number in order to qualify for a school bid? I know, Crystal, maybe can you, from your experience working in procurement?
Crystal, do you plan to answer, or would you? I can just say for us personally, you know, Mr. Lester is part of a co-op. So in the event that they can provide more quantities as a group, as long as that group is following safety standards, and, you know, I don't foresee an issue with that. I don't know, Crystal, if you'd like to elaborate.
Yes, Mr. Lester, he does grow with a co-op. If he can't meet the quantity that someone asks for, he will enlist the other people in his co-op to help him grow, and they kind of go in together. So I don't see that as being an issue. It really just depends on if the farmer feels comfortable partnering with other farmers.
Okay. So that's great, because I know that may encourage them to pick out schools if they know that they've got a larger quantity to work with. And so they don't necessarily have to be a member of a co-op, but they could maybe work as a group to be able to, and as long as everybody has these safety certifications and follow all the guidelines. So that's good. That may encourage more farmers if they know they can maybe work with their fellow farmer down the road to come up with what a school might be.
That's right. So as a group, each one of the people in Mr. Lester's co-op, and you know, I would agree with you, Pam, on that. Everyone should have the same, or you know, have the same food safety requirements and certifications. And so that's what they did. They all went through the same classes together, and
okay, that's great, because that sounds like a great idea. It would be great if we had more co-ops, because I know that certainly makes it a little easier for child nutrition directors to be able to work with one person with a group of farmers. But it is
right.
A small group of farmers could pool their products, so to speak, to be able to provide school. Krista, you also mentioned the fresh fruit and vegetable program. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that particular program? I know we could have some fresh products served in the school with that particular program, correct?
Yes. So so the fresh fruit and vegetable program is it's an awesome USDA program where it's intended where those items are actually served outside of the breakfast and lunch program. Oh, okay. So it's really to encourage students and expose them to a different variety of fresh fruits and vegetables. So the requirements of the program are that it's served outside of our regular breakfast and lunch program. We also can serve a low-fat dip as long as it's a vegetable. So like baby carrots or tomatoes can have a low-fat dip with it. It's also important that we offer an additional serving for teachers, because we want the teachers and adults to role model that good behavior of trying those different items. So it's really a great way to impact schools that may not be exposed to fresh fruits and vegetables otherwise. So
Thanks,
Would that
Celeste.
say procurement procedures? I mean, even though
Pam, unfortunately, it's time for our break after this session, but I want to remind all of our attendees also that the emails for all of our panelists, all of our speakers can be found in the program, so that if you have more questions, you can email them individually. And we do have one question that I think that we can cover in just a few seconds. Celeste,
For
if you
Celeste,
can,
it's in the question and answer, but they're wondering what % of your total food purchases for the school system is local, if you have a rough guess.
Oh, you know, I don't have that number in front of me, but I know with, we also have several meat items. We do a local sausage. We also use some seasonings that are produced locally. And local for us, traditionally is in-state, is what we have traditionally called local here. And so I don't have a percentage off the top of my head for you, but I'm happy to get back to anybody that wants more information on that. Feel free to email me.
Great, thank you.
thanks so much. So we're going to go ahead and go to break for the next 8 minutes. We'll come back at 11:05 with our Farm to School Garden Sustainability session. So you guys go get something to drink and come right back. We'll be here. You don't need to close out your window. We'll start back at 11:05. We're back. All right, it is 11:05. We're starting our second session of the day, making sure we can hear everything. So our second session today is the Farm to School Garden Sustainability session, where we spoke with 3 different nonprofits about how you start and grow a school garden program or community garden program. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start our session, unless there's any other announcements I need to make beforehand. Okay, we'll have several announcements at the end, and just a reminder that we do have a special virtual taste test session happening today beginning at 12, so get prepared for that if you aren't already.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marguerite Green. I'm the Executive Director of Sprout NOLA here in New Orleans. We're a farmer and gardener technical assistance and training nonprofit, but we work with school garden teachers and school gardens all the time here in our community food system.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lauren Jones with Shreveport Green. Everybody calls me LJ. I'm the Urban Farm Director up here in North Louisiana. And our organization is an environmental nonprofit that functions mainly to beautify and plant trees within our area. But our particular part of our organization works within school gardens and tries to combat food desert neighborhoods, which we have 19 within our city limits. So we're doing a lot of work here too.
Hi, I'm Emily Harmeyer. I am the Shreveport Program Director, also at Shreveport Green. And so what my role is at the organization is to run our AmeriCorps program. And our AmeriCorps members are the ones primarily responsible for caring for those school gardens that we have throughout the city.
Hi, I'm Frances Boudreau. I'm Director of Good Food Project. It's a sustainable gardening program of the Food Bank of Central Louisiana. We cover an 11 parish service region right in the heart of our state. Our program promotes sustainable organic gardening. We're a model community garden, and we envision a healthy Central Louisiana where children grow up with an awareness of and access to nutritious food. We achieve this through partnering with people in the community and organizations to try to connect children to healthier food options.
Great, thank you. So today we are going to be talking about sustainable school gardens and what makes a school garden successful.
So from what we all discussed together, we discovered that there's 4 main items that make a school garden successful, and that is the buy-in of administration and community, funding and support, having gardening know-how, and involving students in growing food. So those are the items that we're going to cover today in our presentation.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we were talking about as a group when we were talking about all of this is that you don't have to have all of those, right? But you have to have at least some of them, and you have to have ways and places to look to get them. So hopefully that makes some connections.
So we discussed that the first thing that you really need before you can even start thinking about creating your school garden is really to generate buy-in from your community, to get people interested in the school garden, and to really build a coalition around operating that garden. And so that includes everybody who will be involved in the garden, from administrators, teachers, parents, and the community, and of course the students who will be participating as well. Your garden will only be successful if you can generate interest from most of, if not all of, these sources. And so to start off with, of course, when you're creating a school garden, you do need buy-in from the administrators. You need your principal to be interested in having a garden at the school. They don't have to, be the one to get their hands dirty, but they do need to at least know what they're getting into, be willing to give the green light, and be willing to throw their support behind the garden as needed. And so what we do with our gardens, we run about 20 gardens. Some are at schools and some of them are at community centers. And so when we start a new garden at a new school, the first thing that we do is approach the principal of the school. We make sure that they're behind the idea of the garden, and we make sure that they understand what they're getting into, because the last thing that you want is to be a few months in and the principal say, wait, this isn't what we agreed upon, or, I thought it was one thing, but it's actually another thing. You want all the expectations to be clear and laid out from jump. And so what we have created is sort of like a contract. We call it a memorandum of understanding. And it's just something that I created internally for our organization. I don't have any legal background or anything, so it's not, it's not something that a lawyer drew up, but it is just a simple one-page agreement that states, here's what Shreveport Green is going to provide, and here's what we need the school to provide for this to be a successful garden.
I agree with a lot of what Emily has said. Buy-in comes by giving community presentations, word of mouth. Oftentimes teachers contact us originally with the thought that they would like to have a school garden. So we start the process by sending them an application that's going to give our expectations and point out what we can provide for them. Our program provides the initial startup for their school garden, and we will do that installation and give them the beds, the soil, the seeds, and the transplants that they need to get started. Of course, we do also have that initial meeting with the school. We do a site visit to make sure that the site that they hope to have the garden is going to get 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, and that has a good water source. So in that agreement, we ask that they have other teachers to help them. So once we have the buy-in from that teacher, then we want to make sure that that person gets the buy-in from the administrator. So as part of our agreement, we ask that the principal or the person who will be supervising that sponsor does sign off on the document. Past history has told us that if we don't have that in place, things can occur that might not be great for us or for the teacher, for that matter. Not all teachers or sponsors stay in one place. You're going to lose folks through attrition. So from that experience, we know that as Emily said, that agreement is very important.
Yeah, and I think the MOU is clearly something that like works because every garden organization that we ever talk to that does like school gardens or community gardens, that MOU comes up over and over again. And I think it really leads back to this buy-in question. In talking with everyone, one of the things that also came up is that you can't get one or the other. You have to have buy-in from teachers and the administration. You have to have the whole thing working together because it can get lopsided in either direction. And we find oftentimes there are these like maybe new teachers, first year teachers, teachers with like a lot of chutzpah that are ready to start the garden. And when there's not a supportive administration or other supportive teachers, it can actually accelerate burnout in teachers. And we see that a lot in schools. And so we want community gardens to be something that makes the school environment more supportive and more holistically healthy for everyone, including teachers and administration, not just the students, instead of adding a bunch of bells and whistles that wear people out. So one of the things that we really like to talk about at Sprout with everything that we do, that can be with starting community farms and starting community gardens and school gardens, is that you can't build it right. You can't like go backwards and rebuild it. You have to build it right first. And so really laying the roots and moving at like the speed of trust for putting a garden together, and not blowing through it and forcing everybody's buy-in, but building it together is really important.
It is very important to have that trust. And once you build that trust and get that established, not only is that going to come across to the teacher or the sponsor or the administrator, but it'll also most importantly come across to the students. And also other community organizations, once they see that you have an inherent ability to uplift that program, then they're going to want to get involved as well. Oftentimes our teachers will find another organization that may want to give gardening implements like shovels or rakes or trowels or gloves because they've seen the success of the program and recognize the value that it can give.
One of the ways that Shreveport Green has had a great success in getting buy-in from outside of schools is working with universities. So if you go to your local university, or even sometimes high schools offer this as well, within the university, they require volunteer hours. So you can get students involved and offer them volunteer hours and actually give them something fun and something exciting and something highly effective for them to complete their volunteer hours. So to just kind of go back over this slide and emphasize the important parts that we've just gone over, the main thing you want to do is just make sure that you build a team. That's going to be the most important platform that you're going to jump off from. Get your teams together, get your MOU, and then work from there. Make sure you have agreements on all sides before you really just jump in head first.
So next we wanted to talk a little bit about funding and support. You've built your team, everybody's got buy-in, you all have clear understandings of each other from your MOUs, they're filed away, and now it comes down to the big piece of how do we get this done? How do we pay for this? And one of the things I like to encourage people to do when they're figuring out how they're going to fund their school garden is actually walk through what you're going to be doing every day and then what the repetition of it is, because things are going to cost money that you don't expect. And it's really easy to think a garden is just soil and seeds and I don't actually need that much money to make this thing work. But actually these little costs are going to pop up all over. And going back to that buy-in and support for teachers, if teachers start paying for those things out of their pocket little by little, it can lead to a really unsustainable school garden. And one of the big things that I like to encourage people to do is not to chase money that requires more labor to receive the funding than it does that requires more labor to receive the funding than it would to just maybe put on a school bake sale or something like that. So sometimes you'll see these $100, $200 grants that actually the admin of that grant is going to take a lot longer than $100 to $200 hours of your school's person power putting on a car wash. So really weigh what you can do with your own community's resources versus the time of pursuing other funding. And then we've got some really amazing resources here that people are going to talk through that might be great funding opportunities.
There are all sorts of community driven fundraising avenues. You know, you can go with the federal grants. You could ask around. There might be a group like an insurance company that may want to take you on as their sponsor. I mean, we've got to learn better ways of promoting ourselves and look around for nonprofits that might offer, like our program does. It offers counseling on getting a garden started and technical support, plant seeds. We offer work days in the fall and in the spring. Our local community foundations have been just an excellent source for helping us. We got a beautiful pavilion here at our demonstration garden that's been just an ideal place for us to start seeds. Oftentimes your health connections are are looking for opportunities to promote better health in different areas. Master gardeners sometimes have, you know, a little grant that might help you along the way with some of those things that Margie was talking about. Your big box stores and oftentimes your ag centers can lead the way. So there are probably all sorts of untapped resources that you could search out. It takes a little bit of time, but with that effort, it might be very, very beneficial to your program.
And to piggyback off of what Francis just said, our local Master Gardener chapter offers grants annually. So definitely check with your local Master Gardeners chapter and see what kind of funding is available. They are very interested in funding school gardens, and we've seen a lot of success when working through them. And then also with your big box stores, while you may not qualify to receive financial funding, you can sometimes get on their list for donations. So that means like soil, any type of plants, any types of seeds. Now those seeds and plants will be late season, but when you're working with nothing, that is a whole lot of something, you know? So always check in with your big box stores as well and try to get a good relationship with them, give them your phone number, and don't give up after just trying once, because sometimes they need to keep seeing you. You need to build that relationship. That's really important.
And the same can be said with your local plant nurseries. We've had a lot of great success with local plant nurseries in addition to, you know, the big ones like Lowe's and Home Depot. So check in with the local places because, you know, they like to support the community as well.
Margie, did you want to talk a little bit more about the federal fund opportunities?
Yeah, so I guess specifically there are a lot of federal grants that require some higher level reporting requirements. And there are local food promotion programs, and there are just a host of programs that come out every year through the USDA, a lot of the money set aside in the Farm Bill. And the reporting requirements for those are astronomical and require a lot of admin. Was there another federal grant that we wanted to discuss, Sydney?
We did mention when we all spoke before about NRCS and how they have offices in every parish that you might want to get in touch with.
Absolutely, and that's a really great point, especially with some of their pollinator projects that you can get funded. So NRCS, which stands for the Natural Resource Conservation Services, is an office of the USDA. It's a federal program. It has state offices, and so you can look at these easy maps that come by parish on the NRCS website, and you'll find out who your agent is, and they'll come on out and they can do an assessment of your site and talk about the sort of environmental impact of your site. And they have these really wonderful programs which are called EQIP, and they also have some just like one-off environmental grants. So we've seen lovely, actually here in my neighborhood, there's a lovely pollinator garden for children down the street that was fully funded by an NRCS grant, and And those are some of the lower lists in terms of federal funding. So really what they want to see is proof that the project was executed, and they want to see some pictorial results of that. And those are really phenomenal opportunities for tying in environmentalism with your school garden, because we all know it's about the entire picture of how kids are interacting with nature and the earth instead of just the food production aspect. So those can be really wonderful offices to access.
And in particular, soil conservation. Our local in Rapides Parish, the Rapides Soil and Water Conservation District is a big champion of our program and has been since the beginning.
Great. And I just want to point out some of these funding opportunities you apply for directly just to help you, but some of them, such as a farm to school grant, like in some different areas, it's a different organization applying to get that money and then working with you through their program so that they can meet their objectives. And after discussing with all of you about your different nonprofits, you definitely have different ways of supporting gardens, either by you're going out and looking for a school to get started in, or schools are applying to you to get started and get funding. So there's so many different methods, and we have several listed here on the page. But I also want to invite everybody to check out this great list on the LSU Ag Center School Garden website that has a ton of funding sources on it. So all of this is by no means exhaustive, but we wanted to describe several different ways that you could look for funding.
Sydney, I also wanted to, this just kind of occurred to me while we were talking about funding, is that one of the things that can happen is you can get all your funding in a row for your premiere of your garden, and then the school year ends before you know it, and teachers need that recharge time in the summer, and then next thing you know it, you're back and it's the same grind of having to find that money. So thinking about the sustainability of funding is really important too, and maybe making a plan or a calendar for when all these grants come out. So that it doesn't feel like you're having to reactively fund your school garden, so that you can kind of be proactive and plan your year around.
Exactly. And I think that that's something we'll touch on a little bit more. It's just the act of planning as you get started instead of jumping right into it without a plan. That's something that makes it much more sustainable, is that if you know what you're going to do from year to year and how it's going to continue on.
So you've got your buy-in, your community and your team is ready to go. You've got your funding, and now you need to know what to do with it. So obviously not all of us have a green thumb. Not all of us know how to garden right off the bat. I know a lot of people are probably interested in creating a school garden, but maybe don't know exactly how to do it themselves. Well, the great news is that you've got a lot of resources out there. You yourself don't need to be a master gardener, or you don't have to be the best out there, because there are a lot of resources available. So of course, first on our list are the master gardeners. So for those who aren't familiar, this is a formal community organization that has regional branches, and so there probably is a master gardener organization in your region. So reach out to them. Master gardeners are required, as part of their membership in this organization, to complete 20 hours of volunteer service in gardens throughout each year. And so a great thing to do is to reach out to your master gardener organization, find out how to connect with individual master gardeners, and you can really sort of have mutual benefit, because they can volunteer in your garden and complete their volunteer hours, and meanwhile that's benefiting you because they're sharing their knowledge and their experience. In addition to master gardeners, there are also local community groups. For us up in Northwest Louisiana, we have the Red River Coalition of Community Gardeners. So that's another great thing, another great way to get involved and to really network with other gardeners out there. Don't be afraid to reach out and see what resources are out there, to either increase your own knowledge or to bring somebody in who is knowledgeable.
I agree with Emily. There are all sorts of organizations that you can tap into. there are people here who are in the Native Plant Society or the Herb Society, and oftentimes they ask for speakers. We've partnered with the local library where we do a monthly garden meetup. And then as for volunteers, we have the benefit of being part of a food bank. And so we have very large groups that will show up. For instance, the freshmen at Louisiana College come each August and do work days with us. And then that leads to them knowing about what we do and offering to help. So getting the word out is one of the main things, and understanding that gardening is not an exact science. We learn something new every day. And so if you have the desire and a little bit of know-how, and if you start looking around at some of these organizations, you can find people who are interested in putting out a little bit of manpower or financial support, or even just sweat equity to help you with your program or your school garden.
Yeah. And just working with nonprofits like you all, getting involved with Good Food, getting involved with Shreveport Green and Sprout NOLA. I'm sure there's several other nonprofits across the state that have that gardening experience and expertise that want to help you do what you need, either through consulting or the actual work, but being able to help get some training from you all. University Extension also provides all kinds of opportunities to educate you on how to garden, but also to provide that that consulting, that assistance. So if you are gardening and you're having issues, being able to call your agent for your parish and get them to come see what's wrong and how you can change it. You can find your agent through LSU by going to the LSU Ag Center website and clicking on your parish to find your agent. We do have a school garden specialist for the state, and that's Dr. Kiki Fontenot. I know a lot of people involved with school gardens have worked with her or at least heard of her. She's got so much experience and so many great tips and tricks, and we have a fantastic school garden website on the LSU Ag Center full of resources for you to use. But aside from bringing in somebody who already knows what they're doing, you can also get educated yourself. Extension puts on all kinds of boot camps, conferences, and training events, but so do other areas, like local nurseries, which we'll cover in just a moment. But there's opportunities for you to get some education yourself before you get started, even through online classes. So I'll let that go to LJ. If you want to also mention the online Master Gardener opportunity that recently came up.
Yeah, absolutely. So due to COVID-19, our Master Gardener program decided to put on a free online program that is available to anybody. And I think that when they anticipated a few hundred, and it has exploded. So take advantage of that while it's available. And also, just in general, despite the pandemic, take advantage of your Master Gardener program when it's not free. It's a really great program to support. I went through it, and at the time I went into it thinking, wow, there's probably not a whole lot I could learn. And I came out the other side with so much more information than I could have even anticipated. And then connections, the networking that you get through an organization like Master Gardeners, you can't hardly measure up to that in any other capacity. If you aren't able to reach a Master Gardener program in your area, I suggest going and finding a community garden in your area. Or even if you just have a neighbor that's into gardening, go try to talk to them and see what's up with that. Because I tell you, just speaking from my position, the thing I like to talk about most is gardening. So if somebody's going to come up to me and ask me anything about gardening, they're going to get an earful. And they'll have a best friend, because then we'll just be able to share so much. And typically I would say that that's how we are. We just open up and tell you more than you ever wanted to know in the first place. So take advantage of that. And then beyond that, local nurseries, they're also a great resource for learning. I teach classes at local nurseries. I've taken classes at local nurseries. Sometimes these nurseries will bring in people from outside that are in the gardening world famous. and you can go and sign up for their classes, and they'll show you something very specific and special. And it's just fun getting to know all of your gardening people in your area. So all of those resources are really valuable for you.
And with Shreveport Green, you actually teach at nurseries every now and then, right?
That is correct, yes. And I've actually uploaded a PowerPoint so that later, if you're looking for some information, I've uploaded the PowerPoint that I teach at those local nurseries. So free to all you guys out there.
I want to stress the importance of school garden maintenance. As we found with not only school gardens, but with community gardens, one of the ways that you're going to maintain your buy-in from the powers that be is to keep that garden cleaned and free of weeds and pests, because the first time you get a mice or a snake or something in the garden, then that's going to decrease your chances of being able to sustain it in the future. And also the same for the community, because that garden is going to be a reflection on not only the people who help you get it in, but on you as school or a program. And from experience, we have had that happen. Our first rule of gardening is observation. So laying eyes every day or every other day on the garden is your best bet.
So from what you all have said, it seems that getting that gardening know-how is a little bit about reading the book or watching the video or educating yourself that way, but a lot about networking and working with people and asking them what they know and learning from them.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that, it really is about getting that hands-on experience, and it doesn't take, you don't have to be an experienced gardener to do that. LJ talked about starting the Master Gardener program and being unsure if there was anything that she really had left to learn. And I I took the Master Gardener program at the same time that she did, and I started off on the opposite side of the spectrum. I was completely new to gardening, and there was nothing holding me back from benefiting from that program. So you can start at square one.
And I was going to add, I completely agree with all of this. And I also think there's this amazing opportunity in that networking to bring folks into your garden and build that community buy-in, depending on your school's procedures, of course, with having new people on campus, but for getting people from the outside invested in your school garden, and for also having the opportunity to have a more diverse experience of who's in your garden, especially for kids. It really matters for a kid to build buy-in in a garden that they see people who they identify with gardening and being positive about gardening. And so that can be another opportunity to diversify the voices in school gardens and to show kids oh yeah, people like me are great at gardening. I can see myself in food production. And a lot of the time they don't get that opportunity because either, whatever the makeup of classrooms are oftentimes skewed away from what the makeup, diversity of teachers are in a lot of our schools. So what an awesome opportunity to network and bring in people who might be community leaders for your students.
So you've got your buy-in, you've got your money, you've got a little bit of gardening know-how or somebody on your side who does. And now, of course, comes, I guess, what we've all been waiting for, involving the students and growing some food. This is what it's really all about. And really, this sort of feeds into your buy-in for next year, right? You will keep getting asked back if you do a great job involving your students, growing food, engaging and teaching them. And so this is, hugely important, and it's why we do what we do. Now, of course, every subject can be taught in the garden. We use our curriculum to teach math, we teach science, we teach health, of course, and nutrition. We teach art, all kinds of different things using the garden.
And that's what we have started doing here at Good Food Project. And in 2017, we did a self-evaluation, and we realized that what we do best is work with kids. One of the things that we did was to bring on board an educator from our local school district and get their input. And one of the things that they taught us, and this was from the science curriculum coordinator, was to line our lessons up with Louisiana Believes STEM curriculum. And so we have gotten about 30 lessons that we are, aligning with that STEM curriculum. We go in and do actual live lessons with the students, and that took a lot of effort to get an audience with the school board and to let them know that the food bank was indeed serious about offering this commitment to the students. Once we're able to get in and work one-on-one with the children, we help them see that growing food is something that will benefit not only themselves, but their family. And that's so important for our community, from an economic standpoint, from a health standpoint. And so we've been able to pull in all those entities simply because we have made this very strong commitment to the education of the children in our community. We feel it is very important to do that to raise the health standard of Central Louisiana. And so we encourage them to take the food that they harvest and to share it with the students in the school by taste test, or to send that produce home with the kids, or to the lowest paid member of the staff. If they cannot do any of those things with the food, then we are always available to receive it here at Good Food Project, where we weigh it and then distribute it to food bank clients.
Great. And I just wanted to add in that, you talked about the curriculum that you all have, and it seems like there's several other curriculums that have been created across the state for use in school gardens, and definitely across the country. With the Farm to School program, we have put together a compendium of curriculum that is free and available for you to access, that actually coincides with our Harvest of the Month items. So for example, if you're trying to feature summer squash one month in school and you wanted to teach about it, we have all kinds of different lessons that you can do in the school garden or in the classroom, as well as have a taste test with those items and put it all together. You'll learn more about the curriculum we have available and other educational opportunities in our Farm to School at Home session during the conference. And also you'll have heard in the earlier sessions about how they can use food from the school garden in the cafeteria for items like a taste test or doing like a special meal.
So here we are at the moment. Everyone's probably been wondering, there are so many wonderful smiling pictures of kids without masks on. And our reality right now is that we are running school gardens in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think all of us thought and found it to be a very special moment for school gardening, in that oftentimes there are young people who don't feel safe in garden spaces, especially if it's a new or first time going out into a garden space. And this is really the moment for school gardens to shine as a safe space for kids. It's a moment where kids can be outside and feel safe about transmission that they might be hearing all of these messages about in their world. You could even take very, very big steps back and let kids show their smiles to each other. It's an opportunity for them to really feel like free and safe with their peers, maybe for the first time in a while for a lot of them. And so there are, we're not saying that there's a silver lining to COVID-19, but a school garden can be a safe respite during it. And, if you're switched to doing your classes digitally, if you're doing online schooling, there are still so many ways for teachers to stay checked in with their students. We've heard of a lot of teachers who are actually dropping off little kits at students' houses. We're starting transplants for some of our teachers who are bringing things that kids can grow in pots at their home. So another really amazing thing to do is just kind of gather resources for your students and make sure that they're getting access to all of those online resources, any kids' classes that might be coming up, being part of school garden networks and knowing what other teachers are sharing, and being able to just kind of send them things that they might be able to do in their kitchen or their backyard or on their patio, because we know a lot of our students don't actually have backyards. So just being able to adapt whatever they're doing at home during COVID-19 to a positive outdoor experience.
Yeah, and something that we all experienced with COVID-19, but we also experience at least once every year within school gardens, is that gap of time that we're not able to reach the school garden. And that's going to be the summer, or that's going to be the pandemic. So one of the things that I think is really important that a lot of times gets left out from teaching children is the reciprocity of giving back to your garden. I think it's really important, and it makes a big impact to show children that we don't just take, and then expect to continually have abundance, but we also must give back as much as we take. So with that being said, encourage right before those predictable gap moments, the students to maybe plant a cover crop, something like a legume, like a hot weather bean, so that you can explain to them that you're adding the nitrogen back into the soil, and it's going to rebuild and replenish. And not just that, you're also, if you're going to leave it to fallow, you're also feeding birds, and you're just kind of being an active participant in the environment rather than just letting it, become weedy or whatever. And it's really important to show children that, and they take it well. They understand that's a big part of receiving your abundance. Something else you can do just to make it pretty in case the school is concerned with it not looking good, throw some zinnia seeds in there as well. They'll pop out throughout. It'll give it a burst of color. And then at the same time, you've got those legumes feeding the nitrogen back in there. Come back in the fall when it's time, and you just cut it back, and your soil is replenished, add a little compost, and you're ready to kick butt again.
Great. So how that plays into what Francis was talking about earlier, maintaining your garden, keeping it looking good. You don't have to just take everything out and have it be bare dirt. If you're not there to take care of it, you can cover crop and plan to give back to your garden, even though you can't be actively involved in it. That's great. All right. Well, that about wraps us up. Does anybody want to add any comments before we finish?
I think COVID has put us all into the mindset that we're going to have to look for new and innovative ways to reach the people we're trying to reach. I know here we're working on live video lessons and recorded video lessons that we can offer to the people that we serve. In times of adversity, I think the best in humanity comes out. That reciprocity goes not only in the garden, but reaching out to each other, and this is the time that we have to pull together.
Great. Thank you all so much. We'll see what questions are submitted, and we'll have some prepared and have a little live Q&A.
Okay, and we're back. That was an awesome session, and let's get our speakers here back in the room. We did have a few questions that came up during that session. The first one being, do you have any other tips for engaging students? And that's, I guess, directed at the whole panel there.
Kids like to get their hands dirty if they're able to have an opportunity to be in a garden. Things happen. I mean, it's just the perfect classroom setting. Kids feel a sense of freedom, a sense of abandon, and they're not afraid to try new things.
I think that what you just said, Francis, about abandon is so, okay, so this is like a teaching technique that I only employ when I've felt out a class and know that this is something that they'll respond well to, or that at least some students will respond well to. And it's leaning into the gross out factor and being excited yourself. So my favorite part of being a school garden teacher is, and I'm not actively a school garden teacher right now. I do technical assistance and support and all that good stuff. But when I was full-time in the classroom or in the garden classroom with students, my absolute favorite thing to do is to be excited in the way that I would love to see them be excited, and to follow those gross things or those weird things and like find a bug and really like become puckish as an adult is an awesome way to get kids involved. And to be frank, like they will make fun of you and they will think you are lame, but you're not there to be their friend. You are there to be their teacher and usher them into the like wonderful experiences of being in the outdoor world. And so for me, if a couple of students snicker when I walk by because I get really excited about cockroaches, like that's great, because I know that deep down inside, like there are a lot of kids that are excited about looking at cockroaches too.
Or poop. They love to talk about poop.
Yeah, a lot of times classroom teachers will make faces at me when I'm like, this is like, it's poop. Like, it's okay. We can say, you know, like just it's the natural world. Like be real about it, because it will help them make connections in their everyday life and in their science classes and in their math classes and feel more clear-eyed and engaged like throughout their school day.
So right.
Really important. I've really had some success when engaging children's senses. So something more than just reading and experiencing what they're looking at in a classroom all day. Let's incorporate smell and taste and texture. They absolutely become fully focused and aware whenever I'm like, okay, this turnip green has a really peculiar smell. Let's talk about it. And get them to rub that turnip green or the onion or whatever it is, engage their other senses, and it fully like transcends anything that they're experiencing in the classroom. And they're 100% usually, I mean, they're not even really, you know, distracted in those moments. They're 100% engaged in that garden. And then let's talk about what we're smelling. Let's compare it to things that we've tasted and really try to do a cross section of what their experience is in that moment. And then they're going to be more willing to learn why they're gardening, what they're gardening, and they're going to be excited to eat it too, because it's all associated.
Sure. That's fantastic. That's a really great idea. We did have another question that came in that was about working with NRCS. We had an attendee comment and say that they've worked with NRCS and it was great, which is something that we talked about a good bit when we were putting this session together. But they had tried to work with Master Gardeners before, and they were told that they only help out with Ag Center projects. Is that true in any way?
That has not been my experience here. And we're all in different regions, right? So, or we're in different regions. I think that how a Master Gardener program operates is going to be so specific to the people who are sort of administering it wherever they are. But I know here in New Orleans, the Master Gardeners have been willing and able to jump in all sorts of programs. I mean, even so our seed and seedling starts and our seeds, they were even willing to be like individual garden coaches with adults in New Orleans through Sprout. So so I'll say that here that is not the case, but I'll throw it to LJ and Francis for maybe a different perspective.
Yeah, I've never experienced that with our Shreveport chapter. It's Northwest Louisiana. But they have been highly involved with us and have never really given us any strict boundaries.
I haven't had that experience here in Central Louisiana either. As far as I understand, they look for opportunities to get their volunteer hours. One of our longest standing volunteer is a Master Gardener, and she takes on many other native plants and Herb Society, many other projects. So I'm not sure what the problem was in the other area. I can't specifically address that.
Yeah, so from what we understand, it's really related to the county agent. they kind of determine what projects are available in the area. And yeah, it's up to the Master Gardeners are looking for projects to volunteer with. But you can find your county agent if you go to lsuagcenter.com and look up your parish there. There is a Find Your Agent button that they've put in now, and that is the best way to get that direct horticulture help from the Ag Center. Let's see, do we have any other questions here? Oh, we had a question about looking for more information on a virtual Master Gardener program, and I believe we have included that info in the chat about how to find that. It's called the Home Garden Certificate course. Do we have any, Dr. Hodson, do you have a question? There we go. Hang on, I just unmuted you, sorry. Oh, Dr. Hodson, unfortunately, you're still muted here.
A little bit. Sorry about that.
There we go.
Yes, we had a conversation with a new gardening coordinator with the city of Bunkie. And Frances, she mentioned that she's already been in contact with you about establishing some school and community gardens. And she was very excited about what Central Louisiana Food Bank is offering to this group in Bunkie, and they hope to expand upon it. And I guess my question is to our other panelists, how do you get the word out regarding your programs? Evidently, this coordinator in Bunkie had heard about what Central Louisiana Food Bank was doing with school gardens, but how are the other areas of the state finding out about these great gardening programs?
I think that was directed to all of our panelists there.
Yeah, that would be, Margie, Lauren.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in. So we partner, so we have had many iterations of school garden programming. And most recently, we have partnered with Market Umbrella and which runs Crescent City Farmers Markets on a USDA farm to school program. And so in that, we had very specific intake where we were identifying schools that had that buy-in, the type of buy-in we were looking for, and we're committed to doing the project with us in the way it was sort of architected. But I will say, it's really word of mouth in New Orleans, which is strange. I understand, because we are like an urban area. And so you would think that we could do social media and we could do Facebook, website and all of that stuff, but really like teachers talk, especially, I think that if there are places with school boards, here in New Orleans, we don't have a consolidated public school board really anymore. We have lots of charter networks. And so a lot of those teachers are networked through professional development programs that they might have, like Teach for America. And so then they have these conversations among themselves. But I would think that in places with a strong school board, that those teachers are maybe able to communicate better with one another and really share the program opportunities. And I wish that I had a clear answer for this, but I'll just say every year at the beginning of the year, my cell phone starts to ring about, I heard that you do school gardening, and 5 teachers at my school want to garden, or I'll get an email that like someone passed it to another person. So maybe the idea that, and I love that no matter what, at the end of the day, it's really just still people power that gets all these programs out. And that's applicable to rural and urban communities. And so I think one of the things that might be helpful in a place like Bunkie is actually saying like, no, we want you to put the word out. Because sometimes people don't want to tax each other. There's so much politeness right now, especially with how overwhelmed all of us are adapting to COVID. And I get this all the time where people are like, well, am I allowed to pass this person your way? And I do actually appreciate that question, because right now we're kind of like, we're over capacity. But in terms of getting a program, spread around, like tell the people that you're working with, we're down to help, or, ask this person to tell the folks that they're already working with, like, we're down to help if you have anybody else that you think might need a hand.
Something we've done in the past. I mean, of course, we do all of our social media and different, outreach like that. But one year we actually we kind of pulled it back in and did a flyer, and we made sure that we were putting flyers in coffee shops. We were putting them on campus. We were putting them anywhere that there's like high foot traffic. And that year of all year, and we made it real cute. We used Canva and had a cute gardening glove, and it looked appealing. It caught your eye. And that was the year that we had, I want to say, probably the most interest just from external entities that we've never communicated with in the past. And it was strictly from just having flyers up that looked good and that had our information on it. And just a tidbit of what we do, just enough to make somebody curious, because you don't want to give them everything. You want them to call you.
Right.
So,
Right.
And then beyond that, something else that's really worked with us, we have a great relationship with our local news stations and the paper. And they'll even come out and do some really high-end photo shoots with us. And then those photos can be used forever at that point. And that's another reason why our flyer looks so good, because we have had some really high quality pictures to use. So just using the resources that you have. News stations always want to have a good story. It looks good to have it in the paper to that what we're doing is we're doing something green and we're working with the schools, and it makes your city look good. And now that's Shreveport, so we have a little bit of a advantage on the size in comparison to somewhere like Bunkie, but maybe the flyer thing would work in a smaller rural town.
Well, and Bunkie is our partner. The Move Bunkie Forward organization is a partner of Good Food Project. And the food bank covers 11 parishes. So as you do, we have social media, we have a monthly e-newsletter that goes out, we've done the flyers. But as Margie said, I think the most important thing is word of mouth. You might go through a few months and maybe not hear from anybody, and then all of a sudden, oh, I heard about you through so-and-so. And it's usually because somebody has told somebody. But I think in the years I've been doing this, I think it's that spark when that person, for some reason, they think, you know what, I want to do a school garden. And it has to come from within, I think. And then they really get excited about finding out that they have help in their area. So.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time for our session today, but I do want to go to a question that we had and a few comments real quick. We're just finishing at noon, so I'm going to try and go through real fast, but we had some comments from our attendees about school-wide planting days where every student gets to participate in some way, and also from some master gardeners in Rapides Parish who are always looking for volunteer hours. So we only have about a minute left, and we have a question here from one of our agents, Dan Davenport, so I'm going to allow to talk. So Dan, if you have a question or comment, you can add quickly.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator in Lafayette, and I also have responsibilities in Vermilion and Acadia. So all A&R agents that pretty much do this are spread quite a bit. And right now, I just want to say the Master Gardeners that help with the Lafayette Parish Master Gardeners, that the ones who are interested in doing that as their service project, those numbers drive the numbers of schools that can have the school gardens with the Master Gardeners' help. So just because a school wants one, they can apply. They actually have an application process here in Lafayette. But if there's not the numbers there for us to do the job the way that Charles Hebert, who runs that, wants to be run, then they just fall off to the side. Having responsibilities in Vermilion Parish, I personally have 10 or 11 school gardens that I'm responsible for myself. And so when another school says, oh, I'd like a school garden, it's kind of like, I don't know how I can do that, especially this year with COVID. They're going to allow me to go in Vermilion Parish, but there's a lot of spending freezes right now for agents to be able to go out and do that. So this year it may be a little bit difficult till that all gets fixed. So I just want to know that for those people that want a school garden, there's nothing wrong to send something back with the student home to see if grandpa or their daddy, who might be great gardeners, would want to go ahead and possibly come in and help them get their school garden started. And Dr. Fontenot has different programs, Dr. Kiki Fontenot, where they be able to go ahead and get those gardens started. And the GNO, the Greater New Orleans area, had that class, which is good, but we missing the opportunity to tap into the elderly, retired man or woman that loves gardening that can help the kids with that. So I just want to let you know a little bit more about how it works in my area.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan. We really appreciate that. Thanks for all the info there. And unfortunately, that leaves us out of time for this session, and we have to wrap up and move into the next. But this is the end of our first week of the conference, our second day of the conference. As we said before, these videos are going to be recorded and available to you at a later date. And I also want to redirect you all to our conference program, where you can find more links, including the PowerPoint that Lauren mentioned, their MOU, the garden application from Good Food Project. And also, if you enjoyed it this week, please invite your friends to join in next week. We have 2 more new sessions. It is not a repeat at all. Send that registration link to them. It should be in your chat. But we're going to go ahead and roll into our next session, which is a first, I think it might be the first ever virtual taste test. So we have with us today Judy Mihan, who works at the LSU School of Food and Nutrition Sciences, and we've put together some fantastic videos for you guys today. So Judy will be here with us afterwards for a little Q&A. But we're going to go ahead and roll those videos and get started so you guys can learn a little bit about sweet potatoes. But just to introduce, we are talking about Harvest of the Month here. So you've heard about it in some of our sessions. It's one of our Farm to School programs where we try to highlight a locally grown fruit or vegetable once every month. So this month, being that it is in the fall, we have sweet potatoes as one of our Harvest of the Months, which you can find on our table, as well as on some of our posters back here. We have a full, booklet of resources with sweet potato. We have recipes, we have coloring sheets, we have lessons,
social media images,
social media, everything that you need. And you can find all of that in your conference program, actually, under the taste test for today. So with that, we're going to get going. And remember, go ahead and ask your Q&As. Give me just 1 second. We will share our screen and get this going.
I love Louisiana sweet potatoes so much that I named one of my cats Sweet Potato. Not because he was orange, but because he was naturally sweet. Orange vegetables like sweet potatoes are so good for you that My Plate, the USDA My Plate, recommends eating 4 to 5 cups of orange vegetables a week. I didn't eat sweet potatoes until I moved to Louisiana. Then, the first time I ate them was a casserole with a marshmallow topping. Since then, I've developed an appreciation for an unadorned sweet potato. A simple, quick way to prepare a sweet potato is in the microwave, and it's one of my favorite ways to do it. First, I'm going to wash the skin, scrub it a little bit, and then I'm going to poke some holes in it and put it in the microwave oven for about 5 minutes. It depends on the size of the potato. The larger the potato, the longer it takes. So this is a pretty big potato. It might take longer than 5 minutes, but we'll see. So the reason I poke holes in it is so that it won't explode in the microwave oven. If when you take it out of the microwave oven, it's not soft enough, like if you can't squeeze it or if it resists if you try to put a knife in it, then you can increase the cooking time. Sweet potatoes are an excellent source of beta-carotene, which can supply you with great disease risk-reducing antioxidant phytochemicals. They are a source of dietary fiber, especially if you eat the skin. So find ways to eat them without peeling them. To eat them without peeling them, dice them like this. Now we're gonna check our sweet potato and see if it's done. What I want to check for is if it gives when I pinch it. And sure enough, this sweet potato is ready to cut. It's still a little hot. Gonna slice it. Oh yeah, this is good. Look how beautiful. Oh, look how beautiful. That's that orange color that I was telling you about. That is the beta-carotenoid color. That can be changed into vitamin A or, as I said, be an excellent antioxidant. What I would do with a roasted sweet potato like this is I might put a little bit of butter on it or toss some Louisiana pecans on there, nice toasted pecans to add a little crunch. Last year, we sliced sweet potatoes into 1/8-inch slices in the food processor. We tossed them with a little bit of olive oil and roasted those Louisiana sweet potatoes at 450 degrees for about 15 minutes. We served them to children at a taste test at the Knock Knock Children's Museum in Baton Rouge. They were a hit, and the children were coming back for seconds. You can make a bunch of them and serve them like chips with a yogurt dip. Finally, try our Harvest of the Month sweet potato quesadillas that include extra delicious and nutritious corn and black beans served with a Louisiana tomato salsa on the side.
Hi, I'm Judy Myhand, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to make a sweet potato black bean quesadilla using Louisiana sweet potatoes. A few facts about this quesadilla. Kids really like it because they're familiar with quesadillas. This quesadilla also has red orange vegetable, legumes, a starchy vegetable, cheese, which is a protein, and it's all wrapped up in a whole wheat tortilla. The ingredients we'll be using today are Louisiana sweet potatoes, cilantro, canned or frozen corn, black beans, whole grain tortillas, and reduced fat cheddar cheese. We'll start by placing 8 or 9 tortillas side by side on each sheet pan. And I've got my student, Winston Chase, here to help me. Winston is going to wash, peel, and dice some sweet potatoes. He's going to demonstrate the proper cutting technique with fingers curved and out of the way to prevent injury. Place the cut up sweet potatoes in a large pot, cover with water, and bring to a boil. Once boiling, reduce the heat to medium-low and let it simmer until tender. And now Winston's going to chop up some cilantro. Just watch that great knife technique. Now we're going to build the quesadillas. First, Winston's going to spread 1/4 cup of sweet potato mixture on each tortilla. Cover that with 1/4 cup of black beans and 2 tablespoons of corn. After he sprinkles 1/4 cup of grated cheese over the top of those vegetables, he's going to fold the tortilla and follow that process for each tortilla. Then we have a little trick we do where we spray the tortillas with pan release spray, and that aids in the browning. Place the pan into the oven for about 15 minutes or until the tortillas are browned. Keep an eye on them. You can tell when the quesadillas are heated through when the cheese is melted and they're golden brown on top. Doesn't that look good? We hope you'll try this quesadilla in your regular lunch rotation. You can even try it at home. And that's it for another super recipe from Harvest of the Month. Join us again next time.
Sweet potatoes are a very important food crop both nationally and globally. They're also some of the most profitable, nutritious, and tastiest vegetables on the market. Louisiana is one of the top sweet potato producing states in America. In fact, sweet potatoes add over $100 million to the Louisiana economy each year. Growing sweet potatoes is a year-long process, and producers are always involved in one or more stages. These stages include plant production, transplanting and commercial field production, harvesting, storage, packaging, and marketing. Sweet potato production begins with seed potatoes saved from the previous year's crop. From these seed potatoes, we harvest plants termed slips or transplants, which are grown in seed beds. The slips are then planted into commercial production fields. True or false? You need about 15 bushels of seed potatoes to produce enough slips to plant an acre of sweet potatoes. That's false. It takes about 25 to 30 bushels of potato seed to produce enough slips to transplant and grow an acre of sweet potatoes. Producers supplement their conventional seed stock with virus-tested Foundation certified seed. That is seed that's been screened for the presence of known viruses. A vegetatively propagated crop such as sweet potato can rapidly accumulate viruses and mutations which can decrease quality and yield of the crop. So the main goal of the Foundation Seed program is to maintain the quality and integrity of commercial varieties. The Beauregard cultivar, originally released in 1987 by the LSU Ag Center, was known nationwide as the savior of the sweet potato industry, and it has remained a successfully cultivated sweet potato variety in the U.S. Even with Beauregard's success, the LSU Ag Center has continued to create alternative commercial varieties. The bedding process, which begins in late February or early March, requires several steps. The seed potatoes are first removed from storage and are placed in large bedding wagons for distribution in the field. The plant beds are spaced 5 to 6 feet apart, and the seed is evenly distributed in each bed by a conveyor belt on the bedding wagon. Afterwards, the seed is often rolled to ensure even and adequate soil coverage. Before covering the seed with soil, a fungicide is applied to discourage and prevent diseases. The seed is then covered with 2 to 3 inches of soil using a bed covering machine. Afterwards, a plastic mulch layer is applied and is secured in place by soil on each side of the bed. The purpose of the mulch layer is to warm the soil in the bed and to promote earlier sprouting. The plastic is removed from the beds in 5 to 6 weeks once the sprouts are visible. An additional 2 to 4 weeks are required before the plants reach a desired length and quality for transplanting. The slips or transplants are either cut by hand or mechanically with slip or plant cutting machines.
Drums when the sweet potato piper plays. Go on, throw your hat up.
They are then boxed and carried to the production fields where they will be planted. True or false? The ideal length of a sweet potato transplant or slip is 10 to 14 inches long. That's true. The length of the plant to be transplanted is supposed to be 10 to 14 inches long with at least 2 nodes on the plant. Planting of the sweet potato crop takes place in mid-May through the month of June in Louisiana. If necessary, planting can extend into July, but only if there is enough moisture for planting. Producers routinely apply pesticides to manage insects, weeds, and diseases. Mechanical transplanters vary in size and can plant from 1 to 8 rows with each pass across the field. 2 people are responsible for planting 1 row, and they alternate planting while moving down the field. The sweet potato crop matures in 100 to 120 days depending on the cultivar, the growing conditions, and the spacing of the plants. The first step in the harvesting process is to devine or remove all of the foliage and vegetative material from the field. This helps with the digging process. True or false? Sweet potatoes and yams are the same thing. That's false. The name yam has been used to market sweet potatoes in the United States, and often the names are used interchangeably. But true yams are actually not the same as sweet potatoes. They're a different plant species. The crop is most commonly harvested using 1 to 4 row mechanical chain diggers. The 2-row mechanical harvester is the most common harvester used in Louisiana. As the harvester travels down the row, the sweet potatoes are moved along a chain on each side of the harvester. Laborers sort through the sweet potatoes, field grading them into different marketing classifications, including U.S. No. 1s, jumbos, and canner sweet potatoes.
Hey, sweet potato, how do you do? I'm fresh from Decatur looking for some sweet potato like you.
At the end of the harvesting process, the sweet potatoes are placed in 20 bushel or larger bulk bins. Next, they're moved into curing and storage facilities.
'Cause I'm gonna love you, baby, like you never have been loved before.
True or false? Sweet potatoes are at their sweetest, fresh out of the ground. That's false. Freshly harvested sweet potatoes, referred to as green, are not as sweet, soft, and moist as properly cured sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes can be marketed year-round, and the quality will vary depending on the time of the year, along with the duration and quality of storage. Sweet potatoes can be shipped green soon after harvesting, but more commonly they are subject to a curing process. The curing process involves holding freshly harvested sweet potatoes at 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 85 to 95% humidity for 5 to 7 days. This process accomplishes several things. It sets the skin, heals wounds and abrasions, and begins converting starch to sugars, which makes the sweet potatoes tastier. The sweet potatoes are then held for 6 weeks or longer in a well-ventilated storage facility at 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit and 85 to 90% humidity. Sweet potatoes at this point are referred to as cured, and they're at their sweetest, meaning they're preferred by customers.
I'm just crazy about my sweet potato. Yes, sir. My sweet potato's crazy for me. Yeah, my sweet potato's crazy about me.
Sweet potatoes are held in storage facilities until they are packed and shipped to market. Under ideal storage conditions, they can be stored and sold for a year or longer. Fresh cured Louisiana sweet potatoes are shipped across the U.S. and worldwide. The previous year's crop is usually sold before the current year's harvest even begins. True or false? The term yams was first used to describe sweet potatoes in Louisiana. That's true. Using the name yams to describe sweet potatoes was a marketing tool started in 1937 to help distinguish Louisiana's softer, sweeter, and moister varieties from the drier varieties grown on the East Coast. Sweet potatoes sold for processing are most often moved in bulk to various processing facilities. There, they are turned into a number of different value-added sweet potato products for consumers. Products like canned sweet potatoes, chips, fries, cookies and other flour-based items, juices, baby food, and pet food.
Sweet potato, sweet potato, sweet potato pie, sweet potato, sweet potato, sweet potato pie, sweet potato, sweet potato.
So the next time you help yourself to a nice baked sweet potato, or eat a tasty slice of sweet potato pie, or any sweet potato product, you'll know that a lot of work went into producing one of the most nutritious vegetables around. The work is time-consuming and difficult, but the fruits of the labor, oh, how sweet they are.
Okay. I hope you all enjoyed that video. That was very entertaining and educational. We here in the room learned a lot. Okay, but I think we had a few questions. Judy, we were wondering about skinning or peeling sweet potatoes or leaving the skin on. Some pros and cons there.
Well, they're far more nutritious if you leave the skin on. And so I usually do leave the skin on. But some people, especially when they're making perhaps the sweet potato quesadilla, find that the skin gets in the way a little bit of making a good mash. One way to do it is to, I guess what bothers me about using the microwave for cooking the sweet potatoes, which is something that they do in the schools fairly often, is that sometimes then the skin gets discarded. And coming up with ways to make sure that that skin gets consumed is a good idea. Much more dietary fiber in the skin, so it's good to. You saw how many times they washed them in that video, so they're pretty clean by the time you get them. But then, of course, you need to wash them too.
Dr. Hassan, do I understand it that you have made your own sweet potato black bean quesadilla today?
Yes, in fact, my husband Charlie sat with us and had lunch with me.
Hey, Charlie.
Well, I'll tell you hello. So he enjoyed it. Being a good Cajun, though, he said it needed a little Cajun seasoning. But as far as he's concerned, it was really delicious. Really was good.
Oh, very good.
Sweet potato. So it passed our muster. We enjoyed it. It was really good.
Great. I'm sure that our viewers noticed watching the sweet potato recipe video that the first thing that came up was a recipe for 50 servings.
Right.
That's for our cafeteria recipe. But our team here decided that, since we can't tailgate, might as well make that recipe at home. If you have 50 people, well, wait, I don't know how many people you can have come over to watch the game now. So
50 people separated.
50 people separated. Yeah, send it out to your friends and have everybody make
10
potato
very hungry.
quesadillas.
Yeah.
10 very hungry people. Let's see. Kathy, did you have a question that you wanted to ask or anything pitch into this session? We can't hear you, Kathy, if you're talking. I know that we had talked a lot about sweet potatoes in the planning process of this conference and how easy it is to get kids involved with some sweet potato prep.
Yeah, I think this is my hand. Thank you for sharing all your tips. I think the microwave technique is great because that's really easy to do. I know that our child nutrition professionals, they had a culinary training just last year where they learned how to make the quesadillas. So hopefully we'll see more of those in the cafeteria. I do have a question with the sweet potato. Sometimes when I cut it, it starts to turn a little bit brown at the edges. How can you prevent that?
Well, the best thing to do is, so say you're going to cut or chop sweet potatoes up to get ready to cook them. The best thing to do is get them right into the water.
Okay.
So just like any kind of an oxidative browning that takes place, the best thing to do is make sure it's not exposed to oxygen for too long.
Great, thank you. We will remember that.
So we only have about 3 minutes left, but I have a question about like when you're picking sweet potatoes at the store and keeping them good for a long time, because I have a problem where maybe it takes me too long to get to them, but I start growing sweet potatoes in my kitchen because they start having the shoots come out of them. So what's the best way to, let's pick the best sweet potato and then keep it lasting in your house?
I'm glad that you asked that question because a lot of people don't realize that you're supposed to store them at room temperature. But one of the reasons that you're getting some sprouts on your sweet potatoes is because maybe the place where you're storing them is a little warmer than what we call room temperature, which is 70 degrees. So you want to, and the other thing is, don't have them anywhere near a window or, so, it needs to be in a dark place. But they'll still grow. Oh, they'll still sprout. Don't get me wrong.
I actually keep them above a small fridge that has heat coming out of it next to the window. So I guess I'm really asking them to start sprouting. I wanted to take a second to show everybody this resource though. And I know you can't see it well from here, but this is our seasonality chart that you can find on our website. You can print it out as a 3-page document and go through it. And you can see it's by month and it's separated into these different sections of different food items that our child nutrition directors need to have on their menus. The red orange, the dark green, the legumes that Judy was mentioning in our recipe video. But you can go through and see which items are available here in October. And these are items that you're likely to find grown locally across the state. I know that we are just about wrapping up. And we do have a new addition that I'd like to point out over here, and I might have Alessandro come run this to the camera so that our viewers at home can see it. But we have a new poster. And while Alessandro is, let's zoom out a little bit. Sorry, we're working on it. We have a new lettuce poster here, so that'll be available for our Harvest of the Month schools to put up to have a lettuce Harvest of the Month, which you can find grown locally pretty commonly and grown hydroponically as well. And while we have Alessandro there, we've included a list in our conference program of where to find local sweet potatoes and other products using Market Maker. So Alessandro, could you just give a really quick blurb about Market Maker and how you can use it to find?
Of course. Market Maker is an online resource tool similar to, if you would like to compare to Facebook, but instead of having a profile about yourself as a person, you have a profile about your farm. So if you are a school or another institution that would like to serve local Louisiana product, you can go onto Market Maker and then search for that product. For example, we just saw sweet potatoes and yams. If you're looking for sweet potatoes, you can look for those, find farmers in your area, either by zip code, a mileage radius, or by parish, and then contact those farmers via their profile, where they have all the contact information necessary that you need to get in contact with you. And similarly, if you are a farmer watching us today, the schools, for example, Lafayette and Livingston Parish, they are both registered on Market Maker as well, and you're able to get in contact with food nutrition directors in those parish in order to offer your products you have available for sale and make them aware of the farm in their proximity.
Great. All right, thank you. Yeah, so if you're not on Market Maker, you can get on it now to sell your product or to look for products. But that about wraps up our first week of our conference. I'll open it up to if any of our panelists or Crystal want to make any last comments before we close the meeting out. All good? All right, well, thank you everybody so much for joining us. Thank you to our attendees and thank you so much to our speakers, all of the work that you did to get this ready. We really appreciate it. Thank you to our steering committee, of course, for pulling this together. But I'm gonna go ahead and close out our meeting. Thank you everybody. And we will see you next week, next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Remember to take the Farm to School Challenge and enjoy the beginning of National Farm to School Month. Bye, thank you.
Bye everybody.